Trump is back in the White House and said he's feeling great after his weekend stay at the hospital for his COVID-19 diagnosis. But important questions remain. What's the impact on his re-election campaign? And will the White House shift its stance as more staff catch COVID? And critical reports versus reality. What's life really like in Xinjiang, according to people who have actually been? I'm Zhong Shi in for Liu Xin today. Welcome to The Point. Stocks fell on Wall Street Tuesday after U.S. President Donald Trump ordered aides to stop negotiating with Democrats over another round of coronavirus stimulus packages until after November's election. The move comes after Trump returned to the White House to continue his treatment for coronavirus following a 3-night hospital stay. And since Trump announced he and the First Lady contracted the virus, mixed messages over his health have emerged from the White House. And Trump, meanwhile, has been calling on Americans not to let the virus dominate their lives and to live with it. What does he mean exactly? And what's Trump's new campaign strategy with the election less than 1 month away? And what's the impact on the U.S.'s fight against the virus? Joining me for the discussion from Shanghai is Professor Chen, Executive Director of Asia Pacific Studies Center at East China Normal University. And from Florida, we have Dr. Eland, Senior Fellow at the Independent Institute. Gentlemen, welcome to The Point. Professor Chen, I want to start with you. Let's first look at the latest development. President Trump on Tuesday ordered Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin to stop negotiating with House Speaker Nancy Pelosi on coronavirus relief talks until after November's election. Markets have reacted quickly to the message and stocks are dropping. Professor Chen, what is the rationale behind this decision, if any at all? Because we've also seen him quickly contradict himself on Twitter by asking Congress to immediately pass aid to U.S. airlines and small businesses. Very confusing. What is going on?
Yeah, I think actually the bailout, the package was supposedly to be, in support of the U.S. economy, which is in severe, serious, recession. But, according to some interpretation, the Trump administration, Trump himself, is regarding actually the bailout package will be in favor of some states, some of the states that are controlled by the Democrats. So as a way actually to increase his own power base and also to retrench the support for the Democrats, he becomes quite reluctant to do something, spend big, in support of the Democrat states. That is actually part of the motive that he is actually, sort of like, cringing from his original plan to provide support. On the other hand, of course, he's also promising, for a kind of, a bailout and also stimulus bill after he wins the election. He's talking about his own winning of the election after the early November 3rd, and believing that actually after he wins the election, he will be providing support, stimulus support, injecting billions or trillions of dollars as a reward, as a bait, for his supporters. I think actually that is actually part of the rationale that actually has motivated him to be doing so.
Dr. Eland, is he scrapping negotiations out of political considerations? Because the simple fact is the slight economic recovery in the U.S. this year has been driven by that stimulus package passed by Congress in spring. And if economy is more his department than Joe Biden's, does it make sense for him to stop negotiations for a new round of stimulus?
Well, I would think he would want the stimulus more than anybody else. In the United States, usually the economy is blamed on the president, even though the president sometimes doesn't really have that much influence over the economy. And he did this just shortly after his Fed chairman, who is arguably the second most powerful person in the United States because it controls the money supply, this Fed chairman had said, we really are in desperate need of another stimulus. and also I'm not going to raise interest rates for 3 years, which is a long time. So this is, you can argue the fact that where the United States spends more than it takes in tax revenue, and we've done that, and that's partially Trump's fault for having a tax cut in the beginning part of administration, but increasing spending. So, but politically, this is really kind of crazy because he needs the stimulus more than anybody else does. And I think the Democrats are just willing to, say, hey, he just said I nixed the negotiations. Now I think he's already realized, or somebody told him that was a bad political move. So now he's trying to tweet that he might be willing to send out stimulus checks or whatever. And the Democrats aren't going to let him do that because he likes to personally sign the stimulus checks, not each one, but I mean a signature machine. So he's got his name on them. But of course, the Democrats don't get any credit for it at all. So I don't think that's going to fly. We'll see. And this idea that you're only going to get the stimulus if you elect him, if you elect the Democrats, you're probably going to get a bigger stimulus because they are at a higher level now. They want 2.4 trillion, and the Republicans have only come up to 1.6 trillion. So I think this is crazy politically, and the stock market drop indicated that. If he was going to say that, now is his policy, he should have waited a little bit longer till the markets closed.
I do want to spend some time talking about his health because some have said, we don't know, that's true. Some have said that him taking steroids might have had an effect on his thinking, on his decision-making. In terms of Trump's health, there have been mixed messages coming from the White House. When Trump returned to the White House on Monday after a weekend hospital stay for coronavirus treatment, his health status has largely been a mystery. We don't know everything we need to know about the kind of status he is in. His doctor is certainly painting a rosy picture while prescribing medication reserved for the sickest patients. Professor Chen, when you observe the situation, how important do you think the president's health status is?
Yeah, it is obviously very important because as the most important, office in the United States, he's not only steering the course of the election campaign, but actually he's running the country, running the biggest country, the most powerful country in the world. So actually that is part of the reason that actually he's really, in a rush to be back in the office, to take control of the scenario, which is actually obviously already in a kind of disarray. On the other hand, of course, all his preoccupation is about politics, is about his prospect of getting re-elected, actually to create his own image, to resurrect his image as a strong, president. He needs to be back in the White House instead of, staying in the hospital. Obviously, of course, at the Walter Reed Hospital, he could still run the country as president, but that would portray himself as a kind of patient, which actually he is. But really, nobody would be voting a sick person, a sick, 74-year-old, old man into the office of the U.S. president. So he needs to, get rid of that image and get rid of, his image as a patient and get back to his work as president. That actually, I think, is what motivated him to get back into, the White House. On the other hand, of course, there's largely a lot of, politics going on, to, the polls, of course, obviously have been, being quite, portentous for him, so obviously he needs to get back into his work, try to win as much ground as possible.
Dr. Eland, Donald Trump returned to the White House quickly to reinforce his image as a strong man. He obviously wants to be looked upon as a strong man, the strong man that not only survives the coronavirus, but now has had firsthand experience dealing with and fighting the coronavirus. The question is, when he does that and potentially exposes more people, White House staff, and people working around him to the coronavirus, is he coming out of this looking stronger or looking weaker?
Well, his return to the White House reminded me of an authoritarian dictator He was wheezing when he got up to the stairs, and so he didn't really pull it off very well. But this is right. He's trying to maintain the strongman approach, the I'm in control approach. Problem is, he is dealing with or has even caused an outbreak of 17 or 18 people in the White House or related to the White House having the virus. So it doesn't really look like he's, doing a very good job if he is in control, and certainly putting other people in danger, as he did by that, doesn't play too well with a lot of voters here. And I think his effectiveness in the virus in polls has dropped even worse than it was. And he is behind in the polls, so he's eager to get back to work, pretend everything's okay, and then maybe even get it back out on the campaign trail, which, if he's still infectious, would be a very bad thing, I think.
Well, we have about a month till Election Day, so there isn't exactly a lot of time left for either candidate to maneuver or come up with a new plan. As Dr. Eland there mentioned, Donald Trump is behind Joe Biden in the polls. Professor Chen, what do you think is going to happen to the re-election campaign for Donald Trump? How will he leverage his diagnosis with the coronavirus to gain more support, to win more voters? What does he have to do?
I think actually his prospects of getting re-elected is getting more and more dismal, because obviously already the death toll of the pandemic's fatality in the United States is already 210,000, and with that kind of statistics behind him actually, and also he himself getting infected, which is very indicative of his own defiance of science and common sense, and also his mismanagement of the whole situation, and his policies, his measures have been proved to be quite erroneous, cost the United States the economic costs and also human lives. That actually is actually all layouts before him as a kind of obstacles for him to getting re-elected. That is why actually he's getting really desperate, such kind of desperacy for him to get out of the hospital in such a rush is not indicative of his an act of defiance or heroic bravery act, but actually a kind of desperacy. He needs actually to show the world that actually he's back in control. But the stronger he pretends to be, actually the weaker actually he reveals the world he actually is. That is actually the reality. It's the day-to-day reality of the United States that he's presenting as a macrocosm to the world.
Dr. Eland, even though several polls show that Biden lead Trump by double-digit points, we know that polls are not always reliable. If history were any lessons, they could be wrong. When you look at those polling results and when you look at the time frame we have between now and Election Day, what could the Trump campaign do to turn things around, if you will?
Well, as we get closer and closer to the elections, we're now less than 4 weeks to the election. The window to a victory gets, starts closing. And of course, the last time he won by the skin of his teeth, as we like to say in the United States, meaning by a very small margin in 3 states, of Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. Well, Biden's up in all those states, and Biden is up on some of the other swing states where a system works. Biden's in a very good position. Now, that doesn't mean Trump couldn't win. He sort of pulled out a surprise win last time. But there's several different factors. I think Biden has higher favorability than Hillary Clinton did in 2016. Biden is ahead and on the various key issues such as the virus, racial tensions, etc. And the other thing I think is that the demographics have changed. In 4 years, it's a different election than it was 4 years ago. We've had increasing diversity in the suburbs, which is a key battleground for the election. We've seen older people age 65 and over used to support Trump. Now they're going heavily for Biden, and I think it's because of how he's handled the pandemic, which has been, they expect, whether they should expect this or not is a question, but they do expect some federal response, and he didn't really alert the people to the coming epidemic, and he also has denied that it's a problem. He hasn't worn a mask up until now, and then he took it off when he just got back to the White House. So I think people are thinking, he just wants to open up the economy for his own political gain, which is essentially what he wants to do. But I think people are realizing that, and I don't see him getting, coming from behind and winning
Understood.
this thing. Also, the state polling is better than it was 4 years ago.
We're running out of time here. Very briefly from both of you, the second presidential debate, if that does happen, what will you be looking forward to seeing? Professor Chen, starting with you.
Yeah, I think the second debate is very important because the first debate turned out to be chaotic, disastrous, and I think Trump wants very much to have that debate to be happening, to take place, for him to present himself as someone who has overcome the disease. But for
I'm sorry
Biden,
to interrupt you. We are running out of time. I got to run. Dr. Eland, my apologies to you also. Professor Chen Hong from East China Normal University, Dr. Ivan Eland from the Independent Institute. Thank you so much. We'll now take a short break, and when we come back, Xinjiang has seen dramatic changes over the last six decades, but has also attracted plenty of controversy. And does life there really reflect all the negative press? My colleague Wang Guan talked to some insiders who have their own stories to share.